I knew something felt weird the moment I saw his profile. Not in a dramatic way, just something slightly off. His pictures looked normal, nothing crazy, but every caption on his profile said stuff like loyalty first and trust is earned, not given. I thought he was just one of those serious guys who got burned before and wanted something chill. We matched and talked for a couple days, and he kept mentioning how he didn't talk to other people once he showed interest. I didn't think anything of it until he said he would only meet me if I promised I wasn't talking to anyone else. I ignored that comment, and we ended up planning a date anyway. We met at this random burger spot near a canal. It was quiet, hardly anyone around. He showed up on time, dressed neatly, barely smiled. Right away, he slid into the seat across from me and leaned forward like we were already having a deep argument. Before we even started eating, he said he wanted something serious and wanted to know if I was seeing anyone else. I told him I was just dating around like everyone does, and he stared at me for a solid 10 seconds without blinking. He said he didn't believe in talking to other people once you match with someone. Then he asked me if I would stop talking to everyone else right there on the spot. I laughed it off, but he didn't. He repeated it again and asked me to confirm. I told him I just met him. That's when things turned strange. He said he wouldn't tell me his last name unless I promised to be exclusive. I thought he was joking at first, but his face didn't budge. Then he asked me what my last name was, my street, and where I work. I refused. He took a sip of his drink and said he already knew those things. That hit me hard. I asked how, and he shrugged and pulled up a picture of me standing outside my workplace taken on a different day. He said it was easy because I posted a picture with my badge showing a couple weeks ago. He said he zoomed in. I felt uncomfortable but tried to stay calm. The food came and he didn't touch it for like 10 minutes. He just watched me eat. Then he pointed out how many bites I took, saying he liked keeping track of small details. He said he wanted to learn my patterns. I asked why, and he said because that's how you know when someone lies. He pointed out that most people chew differently when they lie. I wasn't even talking. He finally grabbed his burger and started eating super slow while staring at my eyes. He started telling me that exclusivity should come before you even swap last names. He said last names are a privilege and people have to earn access to someone's identity. He asked again if I would agree to see only him. I said no, and his jaw flexed like he was holding back words. Then he said if I didn't agree, he would leave right now and block me. I shrugged. He stood up, pulled out his wallet as if he was going to pay, then stopped and stared at me. He put the wallet back and said I should pay because I wasted his time. I didn't even argue. I just wanted him gone, so I paid. He stayed, though. He said he wanted to make sure I went straight home instead of meeting someone else. I walked out, and he followed behind me, but far enough to pretend it was coincidence. I didn't turn around. The canal path was quiet and dark. My phone buzzed with messages from him asking why my walking pace increased. He asked where I was going after. He told me not to lie. He told me he was glad I didn't talk to anyone behind his back. I blocked his number right then and then walked faster. When I got home, I saw a follow request from another account with no profile picture. He messaged me on there saying blocking him proved I had other people lined up and that I should prove I cared about loyalty by apologizing. Then a notification from another account popped up. Same message, same tone. I blocked them again. I got a knock at my door around 10 p.m. Nobody answered when I asked who it was. I looked through the window and didn't see anyone. Then I checked my phone again, and there was another message on a new account saying he respected that I went straight home. He said he was outside making sure I didn't go anywhere else. I felt my stomach twist. I didn't reply. I kept the lights off. After like 30 minutes, he said he would let it slide this time, but that exclusivity means everything. He said he would be watching for loyalty. My phone buzzed again with a picture of my building at night. I blocked that account too. The next morning, I checked my socials and he made a private story directed at me without saying my name. He talked about how girls break loyalty once they have too many choices. He posted a picture of a notebook that had tracking times written down with dates and small notes like who seen where. One line said Canal Burger Place with timestamps matching last night. He circled one line and wrote stay in consistent matters. I went to work thinking it would fade. It didn't. At lunch, I saw a new account message saying I didn't earn his last name and maybe never would. He said names are sacred and people who won't commit don't deserve them. That night, another knock at the door came around the same time. I didn't go near the window. My phone buzzed again and said loyalty tests matter when trusted people might betray you. I blocked it. Days passed. Random accounts kept appearing. All same tone. He said I failed because I wasn't exclusive. He said he knew when someone wandered. Then he posted a picture on his story of some building I visited 3 days before. He circled the timestamp and wrote too slow to hide. I didn't even post anything about being there. I started checking behind me when walking to work, scanning reflections, avoiding the canal path. One day I saw someone dressed like him across the street watching my building. No phone out. Just waiting. He walked away when I looked. The messages slowed, then stopped. Weeks passed. I unlocked his main out of curiosity and saw he updated his profile. Same captions, same loyalty stuff, new pictures, but his last name still not visible. He messaged me once more saying he found someone willing to be exclusive on the first date. He said she earned his last name already. He ended it with a smiling emoji and a picture of another canal. I never went back to that area again. He still views my stories through random accounts sometimes. Always the same username format. Always private. The weirdest part is how normal everything felt at first. I met Megan on a random weekday when I was bored scrolling, and her profile was full of positive quotes and photos of her hiking on tall cliffs and writing in journals. She seemed calm and thoughtful. She messaged me first, which never happens to me, and she asked these deep questions instead of the usual small talk. It actually felt refreshing. We chatted for a couple days and everything flowed easily. She said she studied psychology and cared about emotional depth. I thought that was cool. We planned a date at this tiny tea place hidden behind a library. It had low warm lights and quiet music playing. She got there early and was already sitting at a corner table with a notebook. She smiled when I arrived but didn't stand up. She watched me sit down carefully, almost like she was taking notes on how I moved. I tried to ignore it. At first, it was small conversation about hobbies and work. She told me she wasn't into surface stuff and liked to really understand someone. Halfway through the tea, she leaned closer and asked if I ever did personal evaluations on myself. I laughed awkwardly and said not really. She nodded like she expected that answer. Then she pulled out her notebook and slid a blank sheet of paper across the table. She told me she wanted me to write down everything I disliked about myself. She said most people hide their weaknesses, and true strength comes from saying them out loud. I asked if she was serious, and she said she wouldn't continue the date unless I did. She claimed she could only connect with people who had humility. I hesitated but then wrote a couple basic things. She stared at me while I wrote and asked why I paused between lines. She said pauses meant doubt. She asked if I was scared of honesty. I felt stupid sweating over something this weird, but the whole place was quiet and I felt locked into it. After like 10 minutes, she asked me to read the list out loud to her. She didn't blink. She didn't drink her tea. She just stared. When I finished, she asked why the list was so short. I told her I didn't want to sit there writing all night. She tapped the table slowly and said she could tell I was hiding things because I looked around the room too much. She pushed the notebook back and said she wanted at least 10 more things. She wasn't joking. I added random stuff just to reach the number. She watched every stroke of the pen. When I was done, she asked me to read the new ones even slower. When I did, she commented after each one, saying how common certain flaws were among men she dated. She said she enjoyed watching someone break down their ego. She said I sounded more like myself when I sounded small. I didn't know how to react. Then she pulled her own notebook back and flipped to a page full of charts. She said she charted tone changes during confessions. She started asking personal questions, and every time I avoided a heavy topic, she marked something in her notes. She asked strange things like how often I regretted gifts I'd bought for people, or if I ever pretended to like someone's pet. She said minor dishonesty revealed character more than major mistakes. She wanted me to admit things that didn't even matter. We walked afterward near a quiet street lit by orange lights. She pointed out how I kept my hands in my pockets and said that suggested discomfort with my identity. She said she studied tiny movements. Every time I shrugged, she wrote something down in her phone. She didn't smile anymore. She said she was collecting a profile of me and wanted to see if I could handle hearing it. On our second date, she brought a thicker journal. We met in an old bookstore cafe that smelled like dust and coffee grounds. She said she spent hours analyzing my list of flaws. She asked me if I wanted to hear what she concluded. I tried to keep things light, but she shook her head and said I wasn't taking her work seriously. She flipped pages and read strange summaries like fragile discipline and conditional empathy. It wasn't even accurate. It just sounded like she was shaping a version of me. Then she said she wanted to update the list. She slid the paper back and demanded I add more weaknesses. She told me I should stop thinking I'm better than the truth. People around us glanced, sometimes because her voice got sharp. She pointed out how my breathing got faster. She said fear of exposure was common in men who lacked emotional accountability. After that, she started texting me long paragraphs about behaviors I did on the date. She counted how many times I blinked before answering questions. She rated honesty with a number. She said she was building a system that reveals if someone is worth trusting. She ended the text saying I wasn't failing yet. We met a third time in her apartment, which was lined wall to wall with books about human behavior. The table already had another list waiting. She said she wanted me to read the previous flaws I wrote, then read the new ones she wrote about me based on her observations. Hearing her say them felt unsettling. She locked eyes the whole time. She said reading the bad parts aloud made the flaws leave your ego, like shedding skin. She pushed me to read them louder. Then she brought up childhood memories and asked things like how often I disappointed people when I was younger. She wanted specifics. She stared at me like she wanted tears. She wrote down any hitch in my voice. She stopped me halfway through a sentence and said that tone shift meant remorse. She said she loved when regret showed itself. After hours, she said she needed to hear me rank the flaws by shame level. She wanted me to repeat certain ones over and over. At that point, I felt drained and confused why I stayed there. I told her I was done, and she frowned like I ruined a project. She said quitting was a flaw, too. When I got home, she sent voice notes describing how often I looked at the floor. She said she broke down the audio of my voice and compared frequencies. She listed traits she believed I had because of the way my breath hitched at certain syllables. She said she didn't want to date someone unwilling to keep improving the list. I blocked her number and tried to ignore everything. Then anonymous accounts started following me and posting quotes about self-honesty. Some posts called out people who pretend to grow but run away. One post had a blurry picture of someone standing outside a bookstore cafe that looked like me. Another story said some people are too scared to read their own truth. I visited the cafe weeks later, and the barista quietly asked if I was the guy who dated the notebook girl. He said she sat there with charts every night now, waiting for people to crack open. He said she warned the staff to watch how customers held their cups because that exposed arrogance. I walked home fast and kept checking if anyone followed. I left the list she made me read in a drawer, crumpled. Every now and then I see a new account in my followers with a username that includes humility somewhere in it. I never finished reading her second list. I matched with Ethan on a random Thursday night. I was bored and scrolling in bed, not looking for anything deep. His profile looked normal. He had pictures at parks, smiling with a dog, nothing dramatic. His bio said he liked honesty and clarity. That seemed fine. We talked for a bit. He asked a lot of questions about who I hang out with and what I post online. It felt direct, but I thought he was curious. He asked to meet the next day. He picked a small diner on the edge of town. I agreed because it was public and quiet. I got there first and grabbed a booth. The waitress brought water. A couple minutes later, he walked in holding a thick black binder. He sat down across from me and placed it on the table like it was important. He said he brought something to help our connection. He asked me to trust him. Before I could say anything, he opened the binder. It had printed pages of social media profiles, my followers list, my following list, my mutuals. He had circled faces and highlighted names in different colors. He slid it toward me and said he wanted me to go through each name one by one. My stomach dropped, but I tried to act calm. He turned to the first page. There were photos of some old classmates I barely remembered. He asked when I last talked to each of them. He wrote down everything I said. He asked why I even followed them still. He asked what purpose they served. His tone got sharp any time I hesitated. He said hesitation meant I was hiding something. I kept glancing around the diner, but nobody seemed to notice. He flipped the page. More faces. Some were girls I follow for random memes. He circled those in red. He asked if I had feelings for them. I told him no. He asked why I liked their posts, how many times, and how far back I scrolled. I felt trapped. He then asked me if I ever looked at their stories more than once and why. I said I didn't remember. He said that forgetting too quickly meant emotional avoidance. He wrote that down. The waitress came back and asked if we were ready to order. Ethan closed the binder like nothing weird was happening and smiled politely. We ordered burgers and fries. As soon as she walked away, he opened the binder again. The next page had family members. He asked which family I trusted more and why I followed cousins but never liked their pictures. He said you could tell which relationships were real based on interactions. He said online behavior is honest behavior. When the food arrived, he kept talking while I ate. He hardly touched his plate. He pointed at a girl I followed for workout videos and asked if I ever thought about meeting her. He said following someone without a reason counted as low-level emotional betrayal. He asked if I ever thought she was prettier than girls I dated. He stared at me like he wanted to catch my eyes moving. He flipped to a section called Flagged. These were names printed with details under them. He must have dug through each profile. He noted birthdays, cities, captions. He pointed to one guy I follow and asked why I liked 3 posts from 6 months ago. He said liking older posts means fascination. I told him I just saw them late. He shook his head and wrote down fascination confirmed. I felt heat climbing up my neck. He paused, then asked me to pull out my phone. I hesitated. He said if we were building something, there should be no secrets. I unlocked it and handed it to him. He scrolled through my following list and compared it to his binder like he was cross-checking a test. He asked why I didn't follow certain people back. He said I was creating power dynamics. He wrote that down too. I tried to change the subject. I asked about his job. He said he quit because he wanted time to focus on understanding people better. He said this binder system helped him identify loyalty. He said friends can ruin relationships quietly. He said following the wrong person online can destroy trust. Every sentence got colder. Then he pulled out a blank page labeled Removal Candidates. He asked me to point to people I would unfollow if asked. I said that was weird. He said relationships require sacrifice. He stared until I chose a couple random names. He nodded and wrote them down. Then he asked me to unfollow them in front of him. I pretended my phone froze and said I would do it later. He wrote down that lie at temp level 2. I didn't know what that meant. The diner started closing. Lights dimmed. Staff began cleaning. Ethan didn't care. He flipped to the last section titled Potential Threats. He had printed pictures of people I barely interacted with. He circled small icons that showed mutual friends. He said these quiet connections are the most dangerous. He asked if I ever met them offline. I said no. He leaned in and said he would find out if I was lying. He tapped the binder twice like he was sealing a deal. We walked outside. The parking lot was empty. He said he enjoyed the session and wanted to meet again soon for deeper investigation. He said next time he would bring my comment history. I laughed nervously and said I was busy next week. He stared, then nodded slowly. He got in his car and left without saying bye. On my way home, notifications popped up from accounts I didn't recognize. They followed me and liked random posts. Some had profile pictures matching faces from his binder. One commented on an old picture of mine saying, "Interesting connection." My chest tightened. The next day, he messaged me paragraphs. He said he read my pauses during the day of this dishonesty. He said certain names on my list had concerning patterns. He sent screenshots of their captions. He asked why I liked their vacation photos. He said attraction leaves digital footprints. Every line read like an accusation. I blocked him. 10 minutes later, a new account messaged me. Same tone. He said blocking is avoidance behavior. He said he would continue the binder update without my help. He sent a photo of his desk. It had a pile of printed pages. Some had red marker over faces. Some had arrows between names. He wrote under the picture that he connected 2 profiles from a comment thread last summer and that meant something. I blocked that account too. More appeared. Each one asked why I followed someone 5 years ago. Each message felt like someone watching behind my screen. I checked who viewed my stories. New accounts. No posts. Blank bios. Same pattern. I shut off my phone and tried to distract myself. Later that night, I got an email. The subject said evaluation update. It listed names I followed and numbers beside them. Trust risk. Influence risk. Past interest risk. At the bottom it said relationship grade pending. Weeks passed. I avoided social media. One night while taking out trash, I saw a guy at the end of my street holding a black binder. He wasn't facing me, but the binder looked the same. I went inside fast and locked everything. I watched from the window. He eventually walked away. I deleted hundreds of accounts I followed. I made my profile private. But sometimes I still get new follow requests with usernames that include binder. They never post. They just wait.
Hey guys, really sorry to interrupt. If you're still listening, then you're enjoying the story so far. And if you are enjoying, then please hit that like button. That's all I ask of you. Thanks so much. Now back to the stories.
I matched with Bella on a random Monday night after work. I wasn't expecting anything serious. Her profile was full of bright colors and motivational quotes about staying busy and never wasting days. She had pictures at group events, workshops, volunteering stuff, always surrounded by people. She messaged me first and asked what my weekly routine looked like. I told her I worked during weekdays and chilled on weekends. She instantly called weekends wasted time if they weren't scheduled. I figured she was just energetic. We met at this coffee shop tucked between a gym and a salad place. She was already there with a laptop open, typing fast like she was on a deadline. She stood up, hugged me, and immediately asked if I brought my planner. I laughed and said I didn't even own one. Her eyes narrowed, but she stayed smiling. We sat down and started talking. She asked when I wake up each day, how long showers take, what route I take to work, and how often I sit alone doing nothing. She took notes like it was a job interview. I tried to change topics, but she kept coming back to structure. She said idle hours breed bad habits. She said successful couples are synchronized. She asked if I was willing to be productive together. I nodded awkwardly because I didn't know what else to say. After we ordered drinks, she pulled up a spreadsheet. Each row was a day of the week. Each column was a block of time. She asked me to list everyone I talked to and how often. She asked how many minutes I scroll on my phone at night. She asked when I nap. She said naps are a gateway to laziness. She typed so fast the keys clacked loudly. People at nearby tables looked over. She asked if I currently spend time alone. When I said yes, she paused her typing and stared like I confessed to a crime. She said alone time creates space for doubt and distance. She said couples who never separate stay stronger. I tried to joke about needing personal space. She didn't laugh. She pointed to her spreadsheet and said she could optimize my entire week so nothing would be wasted. We left the coffee shop and walked to a nearby park. She stopped at a bench and pulled out a small notebook. She asked me to write down what I'd do after work hour by hour. I scribbled a rough outline. She took the notebook back and circled every empty space. She said she could fill these hours easily. She wrote hiking group on Monday, pottery class on Tuesday, book club on Wednesday, cooking class on Thursday, volunteering on Friday, couples brunch Saturday morning, family dinner Saturday night, then bowling Sunday morning, and grocery shopping Sunday evening. My chest tightened. She told me this was already official. I went home confused. My phone buzzed nonstop. She sent the spreadsheet fully updated, color-coded. She wrote schedules equal trust. She demanded I screenshot a signed version. She said she would adjust it weekly based on my efficiency. The next morning at work, she texted at 9 a.m. asking what I was doing. I said working. She asked if I took my break yet. I said no. She told me when to take it. 10 minutes later, she asked for proof I was on break. I sent a picture of my coffee. She wrote break logged. She then asked what I planned to do after work. I lied and said I had plans. She asked with who, where, and how long it would take. I said I forgot. She typed question marks until I told her I was too tired. She told me rest was not scheduled and asked if I could move dinner with her parents into that slot. I hadn't even met her parents. I went silent for a couple minutes. She texted 3 times asking where I was. Then she called. When I didn't pick up, she sent an entire plan for my evening, including workout time. She told me she wanted screenshots of my heart rate and step count. I asked why. She said to ensure compliance. That word hit hard. We went on a second date. She chose a co-working space. She said she liked productive energy. She opened the spreadsheet again. She said I didn't report my steps from yesterday. I said I forgot. She asked if I forgot because I had free time. She marked something with a red highlighter. She then printed a weekly schedule for me to carry. It had 0 blank spots. Every hour had an activity. She asked if I could delete social media because it stole minutes. I said no. She wrote denial phase on her notes. My brain started to buzz. On the walk back, she grabbed my arm and guided my speed. She said walking too slow wastes potential. She commented on my stride. She said she could fix it in a month. At a crosswalk, she asked if I could start waking up at 5 a.m. to maximize mornings. I said no. She clenched her jaw and tapped her notebook. The texts got heavier. She asked for pictures of my desk at work to check productivity. She wanted a screenshot of my calendar synced with hers. She created alarms for me remotely somehow, and they went off with reminders like stretch at 3 p.m. She called me at random times asking what I was doing. If I paused, she said I was lying. She said pauses mean guilt. One night, I didn't reply for 2 hours because I fell asleep. When I woke up, I had 18 messages. She said I wasted potential. She said sleeping unscheduled is disrespectful. She asked where those hours went. She said she would rework my schedule to stop random sleeping. I felt like a lab rat. We tried another date, this time at a public library. She booked a study room. She brought a thick binder full of time slots. She told me to fill out numbers representing my energy levels throughout the week. She asked me to rate daily happiness from 1 to 10. She told me low numbers mean lack of structure and high numbers without her involvement would raise concerns. She started to map my happiness based on her presence. I froze. She then asked if I could cut off 2 friends because they were not scheduled into the system. She circled their names on the spreadsheet. She said random friends cause disruption. I told her no. She said that word was resistance. She wrote resistance level 3. When I left the library, she asked for location updates every 40 minutes. When I didn't respond on time, she called 10 times and sent voice notes asking why I deviated. My phone felt heavier every time it buzzed. The final straw came when she showed up outside my work. She held the printed schedule and pointed to a blank 10-minute slot on Thursday. She said she needed it filled. I said maybe I wanted time alone. She stared blankly and said time alone is how relationships break. She said my future needed guidance. She tried to hand me a new schedule that filled every single day without breathing room. I refused to take it. Her voice got louder. People stared. I walked away. That night she sent messages saying my week would collapse without her. She sent alarms to my phone again. Every time I silenced one, another popped up. Then she created a group chat with unknown numbers. They spammed messages about staying on track and optimizing time. They called me lazy when I didn't answer. I blocked everything. I stayed off my phone for days. When I came back online, unknown accounts posted pictures of me walking home. One caption said unplanned detour. Another said unscheduled rest time detected. I deleted my profiles, stopped going to the same coffee shop, changed my route to work. My phone still buzzes sometimes with calendar invites I never made. The way it started felt harmless. I matched with Ryan on a Sunday afternoon while waiting for laundry to finish. His profile was simple, nothing dramatic. He had pictures at restaurants, holding iced coffees, smiling like he didn't have a single worry. His bio said he cared about security and mutual trust. I didn't think much of it. We talked for maybe 2 days, and the conversation was mostly normal. He asked what part of town I lived in, what time I usually got home from work, how long my commute was. I thought he was just curious. We agreed to meet for coffee near a bus station. The shop was busy, loud and bright, the kind of place where the tables are always sticky. Ryan walked in looking exactly like his photos, calm and tidy. He sat down, we ordered drinks, and for the first 10 minutes it felt like every boring first date. We talked about jobs, the weather, random childhood stuff. Then, out of nowhere, he asked if I ever get nervous walking home at night. I shrugged and said sometimes. He nodded slowly, tapping his fingers on the table, watching my expression like he was testing something. He then asked if I believed in transparency. I said sure in general. He smiled and said trust should be instant if 2 people connect. He leaned in like we were sharing a secret and said he would feel safer if he always knew where I was. I laughed because I thought he was joking. His smile didn't move. He said sharing location permanently would protect our connection. My throat went dry. We hadn't even finished our coffees. I told him that seemed too intense for one date. He asked what I was afraid of. He asked if something in my past made me hide. He said normal people share everything. That word normal felt heavy. He kept drilling with questions, and every time I gave a short answer, he wrote something in his notes app. We weren't even talking anymore. It was like he was collecting information. The coffee shop got quieter, and the sun outside started dipping. He asked again if I would share my location. He said he shares his with friends all the time. He held up his phone, showing 3 dots on the map, saying each dot made him feel safe. I said no. He stared at me like I broke a rule he didn't explain. As we walked outside, he followed close behind me, commenting on which direction I turned. He asked why I chose that street instead of the main road. I said it was habit. He said habits are patterns that reveal comfort. He wrote something else down. When we reached the bus station, I told him I had to go. He asked if I would text when I got home so he could know I was safe. I agreed just to end the conversation. Later that night, he texted asking which bus stop I got off at. I ignored it. He sent another message asking why my bubble stopped moving on the map. My stomach twisted. I never shared anything with him. I questioned if I accidentally tapped something. Then another message came saying he installed an app that flagged streets with crime reports and asked why I walked on a flagged street. That's when I realized he was guessing based on bus lines and timing. He kept messaging for hours. He asked how long I slept, when I ate dinner, who else was in the house. When I didn't answer fast enough, he said silence meant danger. He wrote that danger could mean dishonesty. The next morning, I woke up to voice notes. He said he didn't sleep because my location wasn't monitored. He asked me to share before work. I blocked him. 30 seconds later, another number called. He said blocking increases risk. He repeated phrases like risk of unknown. It didn't sound like concern. It sounded like control. That afternoon, he sent a screenshot of a map with a red circle drawn around my street. He said he tracked bus cameras and timed walking distances. I didn't know if that was real. He said he guessed my building entry time off sunlight angles. He wrote that uncertainty creates anxiety and that sharing location would fix everything. I muted everything. Later that night, when I was throwing out trash, I noticed someone leaning on a bike across the street. I couldn't tell if it was him. They watched quietly. My building lobby felt too quiet when I walked in. The next day at work, he messaged from a new account asking why my dot wasn't moving. I didn't reply. He sent another saying coworkers create distraction and distraction is unsafe. My hands shook reading those lines. Then he sent a picture of the street outside my office. I froze. He captioned it safe arrival confirmed. When I left work that evening, I saw him at the far corner leaning near a bus stop pretending to scroll. He never looked at me directly, but his head tilted slightly like he was tracking movement. My walk home felt endless. Every time my phone buzzed, I nearly jumped. That night, he sent a paragraph saying he could calculate every step I take, but numbers waste time. He said the simplest solution is location sharing. He sent a request through a map app. When I declined, he sent another, then another. My phone wouldn't stop vibrating. I finally turned it off. The next morning, there were sticky notes on the lobby door of my building. One note said share to care. Another said quiet hours create fear. The handwriting matched the notebook he used on our date. I checked the cameras in the lobby. They were pointed slightly away like someone nudged them. I stayed home for days. I asked friends if they saw anyone near my street. One friend mentioned a guy on a bike who seemed to circle the block slowly. My phone buzzed with a message that said, I know you're home. My heart thudded hard. Later that week, a package arrived. There was no name on it, just my address. Inside was a cheap phone with one app installed. It opened to a message saying if you turn this on, trust returns. The phone also had my address pinned. I dropped it in the trash. I slept near my window watching the street. One night I saw a bike leaning against a lamppost. No one was near it. Hours passed. The bike stayed. At around 3 in the morning, someone walked out from behind a tree, touched the bike, and left again. I locked every window. Eventually, the notes stopped. The messages slowed. It faded like smoke, but sometimes new accounts add me and wait silently. They don't like or comment. They just watch. And once, while walking home from work, a bike followed half a block behind before turning away. I don't go back to that coffee shop anymore. I check behind me more than I should. And whenever I see map apps ask for permission, my hands tense up. I never thought I would end up sitting across from some guy who talked about people like they were phone batteries, but here I was walking into this small rooftop garden cafe on a random Thursday night. I matched with Tom only a few days before. He looked normal enough online. Clean haircut, plain clothes, nothing wild in his pictures. His bio talked a lot about growth and balance, and honestly, I thought that meant he went gym and ate salads. The first message he sent was super long about how he only connects with people who have calm minds. It sounded weird, but I ignored the vibe because I was bored. When I walked in, he sat at a tiny table near some plants that looked half alive. The sunset behind him made it look like we were in some kind of cheap dream scene. He waved me over like a teacher calling a student. I sat down, tried to smile, and the first thing he did was stare straight into my eyes like he was reading something off a screen. He nodded like he approved, then asked if the wind bothered me. I said no, and he smiled like that meant something. We ordered drinks, and I expected normal questions, but he pulled out his phone, opened some weird app I had never seen, and placed it between us. He told me he can read energy through words. I thought he was joking, but he was dead serious. He said people store emotional weight in messages, and if he saw old arguments or negativity, it would drain him. He asked if I would let him see my messages, just so he could verify my energy. I laughed for like half a second, but then saw he wasn't laughing. He explained that if I had nothing to hide, it shouldn't be a problem. I told him that it was private, but he leaned forward and said the world was too soft about privacy, and people should be transparent if they are dating. He held his hand out like I was supposed to pass my phone. It got awkward fast. Other tables were quiet and kind of watching. I didn't know what to do, so I changed the subject, but he stayed fixated. He said energy lies in digital footprints. He said people show their true selves when they think no one will see. I wanted to leave, but I didn't want to make a scene. He started asking weird questions about who I talk to the most, what kind of emojis I use, how many unread notifications I had. He tilted his head each time like my answer was disappointing. I finally told him I wasn't comfortable giving him my phone. He sat back and said that meant my energy was blocked. He said it wasn't a good sign. I thought he would drop it, but he pulled his phone closer to himself and started typing super fast. He asked for my number. I didn't want to give it, but I panicked and gave it just to keep the situation calm. Right after I told him, my phone buzzed. I looked down and saw he texted me the word scan. I didn't answer. He just sat there waiting like I was supposed to hand my phone over anyway. I felt stupid and trapped. I got up and said I needed the bathroom. Instead, I walked around the corner to breathe. There weren't many people around. The cafe was on a building corner and the wind was loud. I pulled out my phone to block his number, but another buzz came in. It was from him. He wrote paragraphs telling me he could feel my resistance. He wanted one screenshot of my most recent chats, just so he knows if I'm safe to be around. I ignored the messages and stayed where I was. He texted again, telling me he could tell I was scared and that fear can poison energy. He said he wouldn't let someone poison him again. That sentence bothered me. I didn't know what he meant by again. I blocked his number, but somehow the texts kept coming. He switched numbers. He asked why I was hiding. He asked why I was triggered. I had no idea how he got another number so fast, but I blocked that too. I waited 5 minutes before going back. When I returned to my table, he wasn't there. My stomach dropped. I tried to stay calm and grabbed my stuff. As I was about to leave, I saw him waiting at the exit, holding something small. It was my name written on a napkin with my phone model under it. He asked if I felt better after blocking him. I asked how he knew. He said he felt the disconnect. He said the world was full of digital doors that we hide behind, and he hates it. He held out his hand again. I walked past him fast, but he followed me to the stairs. He wasn't yelling, but he kept talking, asking if I had things to hide. He said if my energy was clean, I would let him verify it digitally. I told him to stop following me. He looked confused, like he didn't understand why I was acting like that. He asked if other men controlled my energy before. He kept repeating weird phrases like he was rehearsing them. When we got to the main street, I saw a couple walking by, and I rushed closer to them so he wouldn't keep following. He finally stopped. He looked at me with his dead calm face and said I failed the test. Then he walked back inside. I hurried down the road fast. My phone buzzed again from another random number. It said I needed to heal before dating. It said he saved me from wasting his time. I blocked it too. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every few hours, new random numbers texted me paragraphs about self-honesty and digital footprints. Some messages mentioned the time I was typing, like you could see me online somewhere. The morning after, I checked my social accounts. Someone tried logging into my stuff overnight. I got notifications about it. My Instagram got disabled because of too many attempts. A week later, a mutual friend told me Tom got banned from a few dating apps. Apparently, he tried to verify energy with multiple girls. Some actually handed their phones over out of fear. One of them had her account hacked the same night she met him. Another girl's messages got screen recorded and posted somewhere. I changed my number the next day. I got a new phone. I made everything private. I thought I was done with him. But last night, I woke up around 3 a.m., checking my phone like I always do. No messages. Nothing. I sat up to drink water and saw a notification pop at the top of my screen. It wasn't a text. It was an app I never downloaded. The icon was a small blue circle. It said scan completed. I thought I was prepared for weird dates because I had heard so many horror stories from friends, but nothing prepared me for what happened when I went out with this girl called Sophie. I matched with her on a random Tuesday night after I got home from work. Her pictures were all clean looking, nothing too wild, and she seemed quiet in her messages. She asked about my hobbies and what plans I usually had on weekends. Nothing gave me the idea that she was going to turn my night into some kind of talent show performance with judges. We agreed to meet at this family-owned restaurant on the edge of town. It was the type of place where old paintings hang slightly crooked on the wall and the menu designs look faded. When I walked in, I saw her waving from a long table instead of a small one built for two. My first thought was that she invited friends, but I walked closer and saw her parents sitting on either side of her. They smiled at me with that stiff, polite grin people give before they do something awkward. She stood up, introduced me without even warning me, and they all looked at me up and down like they were checking if my shoes were tied properly. I sat down thinking maybe it was some birthday dinner or a family thing she got stuck in, but she pushed a small notebook toward her dad and whispered something to him. Then her mom straightened her back and told me she was excited to meet me. Right away, she commented on how I sat down. She said I slouched a little. Her dad wrote something in the notebook. I tried not to stare, but it was impossible. Sophie acted like nothing was wrong. She opened the menu and talked about pasta like this was normal. Then her dad asked me about my job and how I speak at work. He listened like he was trying to catch me saying something wrong. He wrote again. Her mom asked me to repeat a sentence I said because she wanted to hear how I used certain words. When I repeated it, she looked disappointed and whispered to Sophie. My heart beat faster, but I tried to stay calm. I didn't want to just walk out because I didn't know if this was some test she did with everyone or if they were playing around. When the food arrived, everything got worse. Her dad watched how I held my fork like I was on live TV. If I cut the food too loud on the plate, her mom frowned. They kept whispering, writing, and staring at my posture. Sophie just smiled at them like she was proud. I felt like I had no control. I tried to make small jokes to lighten the mood, but that made her dad write more. It was like every move I made added points to some secret scoreboard. I drank water to stay calm, but apparently the way I tilted the glass made her mom shake her head. She said something about precision and elegance. Her dad asked if I usually sit with my shoulders relaxed, or if that was just tonight. Sophie giggled. I couldn't believe she thought this was normal. The couple next to us kept glancing over. Even the waiter looked confused. I wanted to stand up and leave, but I felt stuck. At one moment, her mom asked me to repeat 3 random words so she could see how well I spoke them. She said it told her something about how someone grew up. Her dad asked how often I read books and if I could name a title. He wanted to know if I pronounced things properly. He wrote something down after I answered, like he caught me failing some invisible quiz. The weirdest part was when Sophie leaned toward me and asked if I was nervous. She said nerves mean I am hiding something. That made her dad write even faster. Her mom asked me to relax my shoulders and sit straighter. When I did, she nodded and told Sophie he adjusts well. That freaked me out. Halfway through the meal, her dad pulled out a laminated sheet with categories printed on it. He circled posture, vocabulary, table manners, calmness, and something called social presentation. Next to each one were little numbers. He said most people score between 3 and 10. He started marking things, all looking at me. He didn't even try to hide it. Sophie whispered to her mom about how nice it was to see someone not arguing with the system. That word made weird chills climb up my arms. Then her mom asked me if I would take a bonus section. I asked what that meant, and she said it would test how I eat dessert. I said I was fine without dessert, but Sophie grabbed my arm gently and said I should do it. Her dad flagged the waiter and ordered something random for me. When it came, they watched how I scoot, how big the bites were, how I chewed, and how long I paused between bites. It felt like someone pressed record on my brain. It whispered every 2 bites. After dinner, her dad put his pen down and sighed. He told Sophie he was impressed with some parts but disappointed with others. Her mum agreed. They talked loudly like I wasn't even there. Sophie looked at me and said she would need to think about what this meant. She asked her dad if I passed the vocabulary category. He said I barely scraped through because I used simple phrases. Her mum said my posture was a problem because I sat too relaxed at the start. She also said I chewed too quickly. I wanted to argue, but I froze. I said I needed to leave because I had work early. Sophie nodded like she had been expecting that answer. Her dad wrote one final note. Her mum tucked the sheet into her purse like it was important. When I stood up, her mum grabbed my wrist lightly and told me to hold my shoulders straighter when walking because it leaves a better impression. Her dad nodded and said he would email Sophie the full score breakdown later. I walked out of the restaurant faster than I ever walked before. I felt embarrassed. I didn't even look back. On the way home, Sophie texted me paragraphs. She thanked me for trying, but said her parents agreed I needed personal development. She listed categories and percentages. I was shocked at how detailed it was. It ended with a suggestion for improvement and said I could try again in a few months if I work on myself. 2 days later, I got another text from her saying her parents asked to see a video of me eating so they could check if I got better yet. I blocked her. Last week, I walked past that restaurant and saw that same long table near the wall. A different guy sat where I once sat. Sophie's parents were watching him like hawks while he picked up a fork. Her dad wrote something down. Her mom shook her head. Sophie smiled like this was fun. I kept walking. I was already kind of tired of meeting new people because every week felt like the same questions and the same awkward endings. But when I matched with this guy called Jake, he seemed normal enough to give it one more try. His photos were pretty plain, just him at random parks and a couple of pictures holding iced coffee cups. He didn't look like someone who would turn a simple meet up into something stressful. We talked for 2 days before he suggested grabbing drinks at this quiet bar near the train station. I said fine and thought maybe this one would just be chill. When I got to the bar, he waved at me from a booth in the corner. He looked exactly like his pictures, which was rare. I sat down and he complimented the jacket I was wearing. At first things were fine. We talked about work, food, and hobbies. Nothing that made alarms go off. He asked me what apps I used to meet people. I listed them casually. That was where things started to get messy. He raised his eyebrow, leaned forward, and asked if I still had them installed. I said yeah, because we literally just met. He looked confused, almost offended. He asked if I thought meeting him wasn't good enough to delete everything right then. I laughed thinking he was joking, but he stared without blinking. He told me real connection meant commitment from the second you feel something. I told him we barely knew each other. He didn't like that answer. He reached his hand out and asked for my phone. I asked why, and he said he wanted to watch me delete the apps one by one so he knew I was serious. I said no, and he asked if I wanted other matches. He said trust only works if you remove any chance of wandering. That word bothered me. He acted like meeting meant ownership. He kept talking about how loyalty starts the moment you sit down with someone you vibe with. I wasn't vibing with anything at that moment. When the drinks arrived, he pushed his glass aside and stared at mine like he was watching for something. He said he hated hesitation. He said hesitation ruined relationships. He wanted me to prove I wasn't like everyone else. It felt like a weird sales pitch. He kept asking if my phone was silent. He asked how many notifications I got daily. He asked if people texted me throughout the night. I said normal amount. He sighed and wrote something down on a notepad he pulled from his pocket. I didn't even know people carried notepads anymore. He started asking me about my last relationship. I gave a short answer, but he wanted to know timestamps, how long I waited to date again, who ended it, and how many people I talked to afterward. He wrote more notes. He asked if I ever cheated on an exam because he said small dishonesty becomes big dishonesty. I said no, but he looked like he didn't believe me. Out of nowhere, he placed his phone on the table with the screen facing up. There was a timer running, counting every second. I asked what it was for, and he said he was tracking how long I take between answers. He said slow responses show calm energy, but also dishonesty if the delay is too long. He said fast responses show either truth or impulsive lying. He smiled like he cracked some kind of secret detective formula. My chest felt tight. He moved the timer closer to me. Every time I paused, he tapped his pen like he was tallying something. I asked him to stop. He said he was trying to get to know me. I said this wasn't normal. He leaned back and stared like I'd insulted him. Then he pointed at my phone and asked again if I would delete my apps. I repeated no. He clenched his jaw and took a long breath through his nose. He asked if I wanted to be statistically replaceable. I didn't even know what that meant. I tried changing the topic, but he forced it back to loyalty. He said true loyalty starts before feelings. That made no sense. He asked if I ever text two people at the same time in a romantic way. I said no. He wrote something again. He said the fact that I refused to delete the apps meant I had backups. I said backups didn't exist because I wasn't committed to anyone. He started tapping his fingers fast, like he was losing patience. He turned his phone toward me. There was a list of names. Next to each name was a score out of 100. He said those were girls he dated before. He said most of them failed because they refused to delete their apps. He said after a few weeks, he would send in their final score. I asked why the scores mattered. He said dating was about efficiency. He didn't want to waste time with people who weren't ready. I told him we were on the first date. He said the first date is the most important. He slid his phone across the table and asked me to add my name to the list. I pushed it back and asked why he needed that. He said he needed to track progress. I said I didn't want to be scored. He looked personally offended. He told me to show him my home screen. I said no. He started tapping his fingers again. Suddenly, he snatched his drink and gulped half of it. He asked me if I was using him for short-term attention. I said no. He asked if I matched anyone after matching him. I said maybe I didn't track that. His face dropped. He whispered that honesty was dying. He stood up and pointed at my phone again. He demanded I delete them if I wanted him to stay. I stayed seated and said I wasn't going to delete anything. He shook his head slowly, like I let humanity down. He grabbed his notepad, crossed my name out before even writing it, then sat back down. He stayed silent for a full minute. I looked around hoping the bartender would save me somehow. When he finally spoke, he asked if he could send me articles about loyalty bonding. I said no. He asked if we could go somewhere quiet so I could think. I said no. He snapped his fingers and said most people are lost. He stood up again, grabbed his jacket, and said he didn't waste time on disloyal energy. As he walked off, he turned back and said if I ever wanted a second chance, approach him with an empty home screen. Then he left. That night, I got 3 long texts from unknown numbers telling me loyalty begins with sacrifice. They mentioned the bar name and the exact time I left. I blocked every number. 2 days later, I found out another girl on the app met him and he demanded the same thing. She deleted her apps out of fear, and then he tracked her location at night because he said deleting wasn't enough proof. Sometimes when I open the app I met him on, I see his profile pop up again like it's waiting. Next to his name, his bio says loyalty is a verb, and every time I scroll past it, I wonder how many girls got put on that list. I never expected money to be the main topic on a date, but when I matched with this girl called Lily, she somehow turned everything into a conversation about what I would be willing to give. I met her on a quiet Wednesday night after scrolling way too long. Her profile had normal pictures, nothing flashy. She smiled a lot, wore simple clothes, and wrote about wanting someone stable. That word stuck with me, but I didn't think anything weird yet. We met at the small cafe near a river. It was cold outside, and inside the windows were fogged up from all the steam machines behind the counter. She waved at me from a corner booth and smiled like she had been waiting forever. When I sat, she immediately asked if I worked full-time. I said yeah. She nodded like she was checking off something on a mental list. We ordered drinks and small snacks to share. She talked a lot about plans, travel dreams, and how she will one day open a business. It was fine until she asked how much I trust new people. I thought she was being philosophical, but she looked dead serious. She leaned in closer and said people show true trust when money is involved. I laughed awkwardly. She didn't laugh. She asked if I ever loaned anyone money before. I said maybe once or twice for small things. She asked how much. I said like $50. She nodded like that was disappointing. She asked me to imagine if we got close. She said imagine we dated for a while. She asked how much I would loan her if she needed something big. I got confused. She smiled calmly and waited. I said I wasn't sure because I hardly knew her. She looked offended. She said relationships are about being useful for each other. That word useful sounded weird. She called people who refuse to loan money empty. She said they have no purpose in a future plan. I tried changing the topic, but she dragged it back. She asked if I had savings. I didn't want to answer, but I felt cornered. She said she needed to know if she could depend on me one day. I asked depend for what? She brushed her hair behind her ear and said she has many goals, and those goals require support. She said she needs someone who doesn't hesitate. When the food arrived, she barely ate. She stared at my phone screen when it lit up for notifications. She asked if I lend emotional support easily. She said it's connected to financial support. She asked if I would loan money to parents if they needed it. I said probably. She said that means I have potential. She pulled out a notebook from her bag, which made me laugh because it reminded me of school. She wrote something on it, then ripped the page slightly like she made a mistake. She said she was making a chart. I ignored it. I focused on eating. Then she asked me a number. She said if we got serious one day and she needed something around $500, would I help? I said maybe if we were actually close. She shook her head and scribbled something in her notebook. Then she said if I couldn't answer instantly, it meant my heart was too guarded. That annoyed me. She then asked what about $1,000? I told her this conversation was weird. She smiled and said she asks every guy that question. She said if the number is low, she knows it won't be helpful. My chest felt tight. She said a man's true value is measured by his willingness to assist. Her eyes looked kind of empty when she said that. She pulled out her phone and showed me pictures of random business ideas she had. Clothing lines, food brands, tech stuff. She said she'll need investors. She said partners should invest in each other. She asked again how much I would loan her. I said none. We barely met. She bit her lip like she was disappointed in a child. She told me that mindset is why most guys get replaced fast. We walked outside after paying. She asked again. She said imagine we dated for 4 months. How much then? I told her I don't like loaning money. She asked if I was scared of losing it. I said I just prefer saving. She sighed. She asked if I wanted someone else to fund her plans. I said maybe she should fund them herself. She got annoyed. She said partners share burdens. On the walk, she pointed at a building and said imagine that was her business one day. She asked again if I would loan her something. She said maybe $2,000. I couldn't believe she was serious. I asked why the number keeps growing. She said it helps her see how much someone cares. She said numbers reveal priorities. We sat on a bench by the river. Cold wind hit our faces. She looked at the water and said most men offer nothing of real use. She said time and compliments are cheap. Money reveals who is worth trusting. She kept pushing the question. I kept saying no. She asked what if something was urgent. I said ask someone you know longer. She said people who wait waste opportunity. She said she could not wait. She then asked if I had credit cards. I said yes. She nodded slowly like she was calculating something. Then she said if we dated, would I open a joint savings account? I laughed and said no. She didn't smile. She said fear ruins dreams. Right there she asked one final question. She said if she got into trouble and needed $3,000, would I help? I said we barely knew each other. She stood up quickly, grabbed her bag, and said she already knew my answer before I said it. She said I was another empty man with no purpose in anyone's future. Then she walked away. I walked home confused and annoyed. That night she texted me paragraphs about financial loyalty. She said genuine people offer resources. She said if a partner can't loan money, they are worthless. I blocked her. The next day, a friend from another app told me he matched with someone who asked the same questions. He said she pressured him into considering a large loan one day. Same girl. She messaged every guy about future investments. A week later, I went past that same river path at night. I saw her sitting with someone else on the same bench. Her notebook was out. She was asking the exact question. I could see her lips counting. The guy nodded nervously. I walked fast and didn't look back. I didn't expect to spend a whole night learning about rules and mind games. But when I matched with this guy called Adam, he came with a system built into his whole identity. It started simple, just 2 or 3 messages every few hours. He always took ages to reply, but I figured he was busy. He asked about my hobbies, where I worked, and what I liked to do on weekends. Nothing seemed strange until he suggested meeting in person at this quiet rooftop lounge above a hotel. I thought it sounded calm enough, so I agreed. When I got there, he was already sitting with his back straight and 2 empty glasses on the table. I sat down and he stared at his phone before even looking at me. He finally smiled and said he was timing my arrival. I just laughed awkwardly. He placed his phone face down like he was storing information. We ordered drinks. He didn't talk about music or movies or anything normal. He said he studies patterns. He said patterns tell you who deserves attention. That sounded dramatic, but I let him explain. Then he started talking about his elimination system. He said it like it was some genius invention. He said he tracks how long every person takes to reply, how many minutes between their thoughts, how quickly they message after he texts them. He said if someone replies too quick, he drops them. He called it chasing the chase. He said the person who waits longer values him more. I sat there confused. He said if someone replies within a couple of minutes too many times, they get eliminated. I asked why he cared so much about reply speed. He said fast replies mean desperation. He said if someone replies slow, it means they have options and standards. He said those are the people he wants. He asked how long I usually wait before replying to someone. I said I don't time it. He looked disappointed like I just failed the test. He pulled his phone back out and started scrolling through his messages, pointing at random chats where he counted timestamps. He showed me a girl who replied in under 3 minutes. He swiped away and said she got eliminated on day 3. Another girl replied in 30 seconds. He shook his head and said she begged for attention. He said the best one replied after 6 hours. He smiled like that was perfect. Then he swiped again and showed another chat with 9-hour gaps. He stared at that one like he was admiring art. He said real value comes from those who don't rush. He asked me if I ever replied fast to someone. I said sure sometimes. He sighed and took out a tiny notebook. He wrote something. I asked what it was. He said it was my pattern score. He said everyone gets one. I said I didn't want to be scored. He ignored me and continued writing. Then he told me I need to wait longer before replying to him from now on. He said if I reply too fast, he will cut me off. I told him I don't care about reply games. He shook his head and said people who don't respect the system usually crumble. He suddenly checked his phone and looked annoyed. He asked why I read his message earlier in the day and didn't reply for 20 minutes. I said because I was busy. He stared like I lied. He said people never admit the truth about replies. He said reply time reveals real interest. He said if he messages me first, I must wait longer to respond to prove I cherish him. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It felt like I was trapped in some dating rule book that no one else read. He told me about the elimination phases. Phase 1 was testing the reply speed. Phase 2 was ghost bait. He sends a short message to see if they double text. If they do, eliminated. Phase 3 was silence testing. He waits 2 days and sees if they panic. If they do, eliminated. He said only one girl ever passed all phases. He smiled when he talked about her. Then his smile dropped. He said she stopped replying entirely, which made her the winner. He still messages her, sometimes hoping she comes back. He said people like that are rare. I asked if he ever thought about just talking normally. He said that's weak. He said chasing someone who doesn't chase you back is strength. He said attention is currency. I asked why he needed control. He said control keeps you from being disposable. He said if I ever wanted to be important to him, I would need to lower my reply speed gradually until I reached his approved timing. I said that was ridiculous. His jaw tightened. Our drinks arrived, and he barely touched his. He kept watching the time on his watch. He asked for my phone. I refused. He asked if he could see how fast I reply to friends. I said no again. He leaned closer and whispered that fast responders are replaceable. His tone sounded like he read it off a script. He tapped the table slowly like he was timing something. He asked how many notifications I get a day. He said people with fewer notifications are easier to catch emotionally. I told him I don't count. He said counting everything matters. He said reply timing can predict breakups. He asked if I would wait hours to reply to him just to pass his next test. I told him no. He stared at me without blinking and scribbled something in his notebook, harder this time. He said if I reply quickly later, I'm done. I said good. He didn't like that answer. He asked if I wanted to be eliminated now. I said yes. He looked stunned. He said no one ever said yes to that. Then he sat there silently for a while, like the system glitched. He grabbed his drink, drank the whole thing in one go, then stood up. He said he would give me one more chance, and I replied within the right time window later. I told him not to message me. I left first, walked down the stairs and out onto the cold street. When I got home, I got a message from him exactly 2 hours later. It said the test begins. I didn't reply. After 16 minutes, I got another message saying elimination detected. Then another message asking if I panicked. I blocked him. The next morning, I woke up to another number messaging me. It said my reply time recorded was disrespectful. I blocked it. Later that week, someone told me they matched a guy who talked about reply timing. Same rules, same notebook, same obsession. Sometimes I check my messages and see random numbers texting how long it has been since I replied, even when I never replied at all. I block them every time, but the pattern never stops. Somewhere up there on a rooftop, he's probably adding another tally. I should have known the date would be strange when Mia's profile mentioned alignment 3 times, but I matched anyway because she looked normal in her photos. She smiled, wore simple outfits, nothing dramatic. We talked about boring stuff like weekend plans and food places. She suggested we meet at this restaurant with bright lamps and stiff wooden chairs. I didn't think anything of it. I just wanted something calm. When I got there, she was already sitting perfectly straight, like she balanced a book on her head. Her back didn't touch the chair. She waved me over and smiled, but her eyes darted to my posture instantly. Before I even sat down, she told me where the best chair was. She pointed to one that sat upon her. I laughed like it was a small detail, but she was dead serious. I sat anyway and noticed her eyes locked on my shoulders. She asked if I ever pay attention to posture angles. I told her not really. She nodded slowly like she already knew that answer. She pulled out her phone and placed it face down. Then she complimented the restaurant's chairs because they reveal who has weak discipline. It felt like she memorized that line. We ordered food, and while we waited, she kept leaning slightly forward to look at my spine without looking suspicious. It was obvious. She asked if I ever had back pain. I said sometimes when I sit too long. She wrote something in a small leather notebook she brought. She called it posture mapping. She said everyone has posture angles that show their moral strength. I tried to make it sound funny, but she took it so seriously. She asked me to sit up straighter. When I did, she nodded and wrote again. She said the angle of my neck when talking about stress revealed loyalty. That made no sense. Then she asked me to turn to grab something behind me. When I did, she lowered her gaze and scribbled like she caught something important. I felt uncomfortable. Other people were just eating and talking normally while I felt like I was getting measured for a lab test. When the drinks came, she asked me to lift the glass, and the way I raised my elbow made her grin like she found gold. She whispered to herself about upward tilt integrity. I stared at her confused. She looked right back and told me humans forget their body reveals their truth. I stopped moving for a second. Then she pulled out a tiny tool that looked like a small half circle with numbers on it. She placed it against her phone like she was calibrating something. She told me it measured angles within 2 degrees. I asked why she needed that on a date. She said she doesn't date, she evaluates. That bothered me. I leaned back, and she gasped quietly. She said leaning back past a certain angle meant low long-term loyalty. She wrote it down instantly. I shifted forward to fix it, but she stopped me and said correction only hides sins temporarily. She said the first instinct angle is what matters. She told me to relax, but then watched closely every time I did. She asked about work, family, goals, but her eyes kept scanning my back. When I swallowed food, she watched my shoulders tense and nodded like she confirmed something. Halfway through dinner, she asked if she could stand behind me for a second. I said no, but she stood anyway. She held her phone up like she was checking messages, but the camera angle was pointed straight at my spine. I turned around and she jumped back, smiling awkwardly. She said she was just adjusting the light. I didn't buy it. She sat again and asked if I ever slouch at home. I said sometimes when I'm tired. She frowned and said tired slouching is moral decline. She asked if I ever hunch over a screen. I said everyone does. She looked like she wanted to leave. She wrote something quickly and snapped the notebook shut. I tried to change the topic. I talked about movies and travel. She ignored all of it. Her eyes dipped down to my back every time I shifted. She told me the angle of shoulder drop shows honesty. She whispered numbers quietly under her breath. She said mine was 17 degrees. She didn't sound impressed. When dessert came, she asked me to reach across the table for the spoon. I reached, and she gasped. She said she had been waiting for that. She pulled out her phone and showed a graph of angles. She pointed to a line and said my reach slope showed moderate morality but low sacrifice potential. I told her this whole thing was weird. She said posture science is more honest than words. She then asked if she could take a picture from behind for research purposes. I refused. She pouted and said I was scared of the truth. She asked me to rotate my shoulders inward. I didn't even understand what she meant. She demonstrated by rotating hers. I felt stupid doing it, but I did it anyway just to get it over with. She measured the angle with her tool and nodded firmly as if she discovered the missing puzzle piece. She then asked me to stand up. When I did, she walked around me slowly like she was checking for damage. People stared. She crouched behind me, holding that angled tool close to my spine. I stepped away. She told me to relax, that this was important. I told her to stop. She sighed and said humans always run from truth when it sits behind them. She made that sound deep when it wasn't. I grabbed my jacket and told her I was done. She grabbed my wrist lightly and said I should at least know my result. I pulled my arm back and left. When I got home, she sent paragraphs. She said my back angle showed hidden betrayal energy. She said if I ever wanted to fix myself, she could train me. She said ignoring posture leads to emotional collapse. I blocked her. The next day, I was walking downtown and I spotted her outside another cafe. She stood behind some guy in a chair, pointing her phone at his spine while he laughed nervously. Her angle tool was out again. She nodded and wrote something. He looked confused. I kept walking fast. A week later, I got another message from an unknown number with a picture of my back from that night. The message said my shoulder drop angle had worsened. It said declining posture is declining loyalty. I blocked the number immediately. Sometimes when I walk past windows, I straighten my back without thinking. And every time someone stands behind me, I feel like they're measuring. I matched with this guy called Ben on a random boring evening when I was scrolling just to kill time. His profile made him look like the soft, calm type that goes on long walks and listens to boring podcasts. Nothing on there hinted that he would turn our first date into some kind of trial run for raising a kid. We talked for 2 days, mostly small conversation about pets and food, and he suggested we meet at this family-style restaurant that sits right next to a small park. I thought that sounded normal enough. When I got there, I spotted him outside first. He waved, but when he turned fully, I noticed he was holding a toddler's hand. At first, I thought maybe he was babysitting or something. I walked up and jokingly asked who the kid was. He just smiled weirdly and said I would see. That was already strange, but I didn't assume anything messed up yet. The toddler looked tired and was dragging a small stuffed animal on the ground. I said hi awkwardly, and the kid just stared. We went inside, and instead of picking a booth or table away from everyone, he sat us right in the middle, where people could clearly see us. He clipped a booster seat to the chair for the toddler. He did it with this weird confidence, like he had done this 100 times. When we sat down, the toddler started tapping the table with their hand loudly. I didn't know what to do. I smiled awkwardly. Ben just watched my reaction carefully, like he was waiting for something. He asked if I liked kids. I said they're fine, but I hadn't really been around them much. He nodded, eyes still locked on my reaction to everything the toddler did. The toddler dropped their stuffed toy and stared at me expecting something. I froze. Ben raised his eyebrow like I was supposed to go pick it up. I hesitated and then picked it up to be polite. He wrote something down in his phone. I asked again whose child this was. He said it didn't matter. He said what mattered was how I handled responsibility. That scared me more than it confused me. He then asked how stressed I felt. He asked if my heart was racing. I asked why he would ask that. He said toddlers are windows into moral stability. He kept repeating that phrase like he practiced it in the mirror. The toddler smeared food on the table with both hands. I didn't know whether to clean it or ignore it. Either way felt wrong. I just kind of stared while Ben studied my face like a scientist. When the server came to take our order, the toddler started yelling randomly. Not crying, just yelling because they could. People looked over. I got more uncomfortable. I tried smiling at the kid, but it felt forced. Ben leaned forward and whispered that awkwardness around responsibility means lack of long-term potential. Then he pulled his phone back out and tapped more notes. The toddler suddenly threw their cup on the ground. Loud noise. Everyone looked. The toddler laughed. I didn't know if I should pick it up or not. Ben stared, stone-faced. I carefully got down from my chair and picked it up. When I sat again, he nodded like I passed stage 1. I asked him what stage 1 meant. He said it was the reaction test to minor chaos. I wanted to leave at that moment, but the toddler clapped their hands and threw crumbs in my lap. I froze again. Ben watched like it was a movie. He asked me what I would do if this was my daily life. I said I didn't know because I don't have kids. He frowned and wrote something. He said hesitation meant lack of emotional preparedness. When the food came, the toddler ate like they hadn't eaten in days, messy and loud. Some landed on the table, some on themselves. Ben didn't help. He wanted to see what I would do. I used a napkin and tried to help the kid clean up, but the kid pushed my hand away and slapped the napkin. Ben smiled slightly and tapped on his phone again. He told me the toddler wasn't his, just casually. He said he borrowed them from a friend who owed him a favor. I stared at him in disbelief. Borrowed. He said he wanted to study how people handle sudden responsibility because that reveals who is worth committing to. I told him that was insane. He said most people panic and run. He said the good ones stay calm. The toddler then shoved a piece of food toward me. I pretended to eat it just to avoid more awkwardness. He wrote more notes. I asked where the kid's parent was. He shrugged and said nearby. Then he asked why I wasn't trying harder to connect with the toddler. I said because I literally just met them. He shook his head slowly, like that answer disappointed him. He asked if I would ever take care of a child that wasn't mine. I said not randomly on a first date. He scribbled harder. Then the toddler started whining loudly. People stared. I tried to calm them down awkwardly, patting their back lightly. Ben watched every tiny detail. When the toddler threw another piece of food on the ground, he snapped his fingers and said this was stage 2. He asked me to pick it up again. I didn't. I just stared at him, tired and annoyed. He shook his head dramatically and said my refusal showed selfishness. He said the child was testing me and I failed. At one point, the toddler tried to climb out of the booster seat. I rushed to steady them before they fell. Ben raised his eyebrows like I just did something interesting. He wrote again. He said that reflex was surprising, but I hesitated 2 seconds before reacting, which meant I lacked instinct. He said true parents react instantly. I wanted to scream. Then he asked a totally random question. He asked if I saw myself with kids in the future. I said maybe, who knows. He nodded like he solved me. He said uncertainty equals weakness. He stood up suddenly and said stage 3 was over. He grabbed the toddler and said he would walk them back to their guardian. I followed to make sure he wasn't doing something creepy. Outside, a tired-looking woman came out of a car and picked up the toddler, not even asking what happened. Ben turned back to me and calmly told me I failed responsibility metrics. Just like that. He listed awkward reactions, hesitation, slow connection, messy assistance. He said if I wanted to date someone like him, I needed to be more ready. I said I wasn't trying to date someone like him. He blinked twice like a glitch. Then he just walked off. Later that night, he texted me a full report. It had categories like stability response, patience under sudden noise, willingness to clean, instinct speed, eye contact with toddler. He scored me out of 100. I got 32. He said if I practiced with kids more, he would reconsider. I blocked him. A week later, I heard from someone else who matched him. Same test, different toddler. I matched with this girl named Ava on a slow evening when I had nothing else to do. She looked normal enough. Her bio said she studied psychology at some university, and she liked coffee shops, quiet parks, and deep conversations. Nothing there screamed danger. We talked briefly, and she asked me what I found most stressful in life. I thought it was a weird first question, but I answered casually. She said she found stress interesting. I didn't think much of it. She suggested we meet at this quiet coffee shop near campus. It had dim lights, wooden floors, and small tables tucked into corners. When I arrived, she was already sitting down. She waved and smiled like this was a cozy little hangout. I sat across from her, ordered my drink, and tried to relax. Right away, she started asking unusual questions. Stuff like what moment made me cry in school, if I ever disappointed someone close to me, and how I respond when someone yells at me. She leaned in slowly each time, watching my face like she was trying to decode micro-expressions. She'd tilt her head, squint, then nod like my reactions told her everything. Every time I answered something personal, she bit her lip slightly and typed something into her phone. I finally asked why she was typing so much. She said she was taking notes for a small university project, but she didn't tell me the topic. I felt weird but tried not to overreact. I thought maybe she was doing a paper on social anxiety or something harmless. Then she asked if I ever felt betrayed by someone recently. When I hesitated, her eyes lit up. She typed faster. She asked if my hands got sweaty when scared. She asked if I avoided eye contact when guilty. She asked if my breathing changed when lying. She said it casually, like small talk, but stared at my chest and jaw every time she did. As we talked, I noticed something else. On the table sat this tiny clip-on button pinned to her bag strap, placed perfectly to face me. It looked like some random accessory, but it had a tiny circular lens shape. I tried to ignore it. Maybe it was just design. But when I asked her a question about herself, she dodged it. Every time I tried to flit the attention, she pushed back to me. She asked me to describe mistakes I made growing up. She asked how I react when someone gets hurt in front of me. She asked what scares me most about relationships. She leaned forward when I struggled to answer, eyes wide like she studied my hesitation. More typing. Finally, I asked what kind of project this was. She smiled and said it was about stress response behavior. She said she can't tell more or it would ruin the test. That freaked me out a little. I looked again at that tiny clip on her strap. It faced directly at me. I pointed at it and asked what it was. She gently covered it with her hand and said it's just decoration. She started typing again immediately. At one point, she asked how I would react if someone recorded me without permission. She watched my eyes closely. She asked if I ever got angry easily. She asked if I felt anxious being watched. Her voice softened when she asked that, like she wanted to see my pulse jump. I shifted in my chair and glanced down at my drink. When I looked back up, her phone camera was angled toward me. She quickly lowered it when she saw me notice. She said she was just checking a notification. She typed more. My stomach started twisting. She then asked what I would do if someone betrayed my trust. She asked how I handle panic. She asked if I can feel when someone is staring at me. The questions got darker slowly, like boiling water without noticing the heat rising. She typed faster every time I looked away slightly. I told her I was uncomfortable. She nodded and typed something. I tried to change the topic, but she circled back. Then she asked if strangers watching me would bother me if I didn't know where they were. I asked why she said that. She smiled faintly and typed again. Then the toddler from another table dropped something loudly and I jumped slightly. She stared at my face instantly. Her eyes widened. She whispered numbers quietly like she was measuring reaction time. She typed more. My drink was half gone when I leaned back and scanned the room. That's when I saw something that made everything feel worse. Behind her on a shelf, there sat a tiny decorative owl statue, but its eyes shimmered like glass in the light. It was pointed right at me from above. It looked too smooth and too perfect to be just decoration. My heart thumped. I asked her if she needed consent to record for her project. She froze for a second, then fake smiled. She said everything she did was anonymous. She said people don't care as long as nothing embarrassing leaks. I said I didn't agree. She wrote another note and mumbled something about how strong denial behaviors look. At that point, I stood up slightly to adjust my jacket. When I turned, I spotted another tiny lens behind a plant toward the counter. My whole body got tense. She calmly said cameras make people show their truth. I didn't respond. I asked if we could move tables. She said no. That would ruin the environment data. She moved her phone closer to my hands. She hit the screen twice like she was marking timestamps. I told her I'm leaving. She grabbed her cup and asked one more question. She asked what scares me most about being watched when I don't know what's happening. I didn't answer. I walked out. As I got outside, I looked back through the window. She didn't chase me. She didn't even look upset. She stared at her screen, replaying something like she was scanning footage. She smiled faintly. Later that night, she texted me a long message. She thanked me for participating in her stress study. She said I showed moderate intensity avoidance patterns. She said she got good footage. I asked what footage. She sent a link. It was a site with short clips of strangers reacting nervously as she asked questions. Their faces were blurred, except mine wasn't. I blocked her instantly. But the next morning, I got an email from someone with a random address. It contained more footage of me in that cave. Different angles. Different zooms. It included timestamps on every reaction. It scored me on fear peaks and anxiety dips. At the bottom was a note. It said subject shows clear discomfort when aware of silent observation. It said subject would not perform well in surveillance-heavy environments. It said subject broke early. And right under that, a single line to not invite back for phase 2. I deleted everything immediately. I matched with this guy called Lucas on a random evening when I was laying in bed staring at my phone, bored out of my mind. His profile looked pretty average. No gym mirror shots, no pictures of him posing next to cars he didn't own, just him smiling awkwardly at tourist spots. His bio said he liked self-development, traveling, and deep talk. I figured maybe he would at least be more interesting than the usual small-minded people, so I agreed to meet. He suggested this weird coffee place tucked in the back of a bookstore. It felt quiet in a creepy way, like every whisper echoed. When I walked in, he waved me over confidently. He wore a simple black hoodie and jeans, nothing dramatic, but the second I sat down, he stared at me like he was trying to read every thought I ever had. We ordered drinks, and right away he asked how close I was with my family. I said pretty close, because I see them often. He nodded slowly like he already suspected that. He asked if I felt guilty when I didn't call them back. I said sometimes. He wrote something in his phone. That was already uncomfortable. I tried to steer the conversation to hobbies or movies, but he kept jumping back to family. Then he leaned forward and asked how my family would react if I moved abroad tomorrow. Not in a few months. Tomorrow. I laughed thinking it was a hypothetical joke, but he didn't laugh. He stared at me waiting for a serious answer. I said they would probably be shocked. I said they would ask questions. He typed again. He said that meant they controlled my emotional stability. I raised an eyebrow and asked how he got that. He said people who struggle to leave are stuck. Then he told me independence means being able to walk away from every connection if needed. He said most people's families ruin their growth. He asked if I ever thought about cutting ties to evolve. I said no because that sounded insane. He didn't blink. He asked if I would consider blocking family numbers for a week as a test. I told him absolutely not. He smiled in a weird, proud way, like now he could judge me properly. Our drinks arrived, and even while sipping, his eyes never left me. He asked how often I tell my parents about personal problems. I said sometimes. He nodded like that was bad. He said relying on family means my spirit is weak. Then he asked how many relatives I would cut off if I had to choose between them and a partner. I said I wouldn't choose like that. He wrote something again. He asked if I thought people deserve loyalty simply because they share DNA. I got quiet. Then he pulled out a folded piece of paper from his pocket. It had a list of questions printed on it like he prepared this ahead of time. He slid it across the table and asked me to answer honestly. The questions were all personal. Things like if my parents ever disagreed with my dreams, if I felt guilty telling them no, if I would move far away without warning them. The more I read, the more uncomfortable I got. I pushed it back and told him I didn't want to answer those. He leaned back and smiled like he expected that. He typed more notes into his phone. He asked what percentage of my decisions are influenced by my family. I shrugged. He said shrugging meant I didn't know myself. He asked if I ever pictured my life without family holidays. I said no. He said that was dependency. Then he switched topics suddenly and asked if I liked traveling. I said yes sometimes. He asked how far I would go without telling anyone. I said I wouldn't go anywhere without telling someone where I was. He raised his eyebrows like that was weak. He said true independence means disappearing for a while just to prove you exist on your own. His tone was calm, but everything he said felt like he trained himself to say it. He asked if I would fly to another country with him next week. I said wrong move, I hardly know you. He smirked. He asked if fear controlled me. I said responsibility controlled me. He scoffed at that word. He asked what would happen if I blocked every family number right now. I stared at him, shocked. He said just temporarily, to prove I didn't need comfort. He slid his phone toward me and said he could guide me through the process. I pushed it back. He frowned and scribbled something aggressively. The coffee shop got quieter suddenly. Even the workers near the counter looked over. He lowered his voice and asked if my family ever held me back. I told him that wasn't his business. He said everyone's growth is blocked by someone close. I disagreed. He asked if I ever thought about starting a new life abroad. I said maybe someday with planning. He shook his head like planning made you weak. Then he told me something that made my skin crawl. He said he tested every person he dated with the same questions. He said some passed. He said the ones who passed cut off at least one relative to show strength. My mouth dropped open. He didn't blink. He said the best ones left their country for a month without announcing it. He said they texted him photos proving it. He smiled like that was romantic. He asked if my parents would be sad if I left. I said obviously. He asked if they would survive without hearing my voice. I said yeah, but why would I disappear like that? He said because growth requires shedding attachments. I told him this conversation was messed up. He said attachment is a cage. Then he asked if I had siblings. I nodded. He asked if I would block them for 48 hours to prove independence. I told him no again. He shook his head slowly and sighed. He said I wasn't ready. He put his phone down and read everything he wrote. Then he told me I rely on family too much, that I needed unlearning. He said if we kept dating, he would train me. I stood up to leave. He asked if I was running back to comfort. I ignored him. As I walked out, he called after me saying he hoped I would cut someone off soon. I didn't look back. That night, he sent a long message telling me my dependency score was low. He listed percentages like he was diagnosing me. I blocked him immediately. 2 days later, a mutual match told me he asked her the exact same questions, pressured her to block her mother, and told her to buy a plane ticket without telling anyone. She blocked him too. A week later, I was walking home past that bookstore. I saw him sitting with another girl at the same table. His paper was out. His phone was out. His stare was locked. I watched her glance around nervously. He leaned forward and whispered something while typing notes. She looked scared. I didn't intervene. I just kept walking. I matched with Olivia on a dating app. We met at a coffee shop near a train station. She wore a smartwatch with a custom band. She watched me more than she watched her drink. She asked to scan my pulse. She said it was for curiosity. I allowed it. She paired my heartbeat to her watch by placing a sensor on my wrist. She smiled when the numbers moved. We walked through a busy shopping center. She watched the screen every few steps. When groups of women walked by us, she glanced at the numbers to see if they changed. When the numbers went up, she noted it on her phone. She asked follow-up questions without actual warmth. She tracked patterns. She said she liked to collect data. She said she wanted to measure how committed someone was by how they reacted to strangers. We sat on a bench near a clothing store. She showed me graphs. Heart rate spikes near bright colors. Heart rate dips near slow walkers. Heart rate spikes near specific height ranges. She assigned meaning to random signals. She said she would need more data later. We walked again. She steered us into crowded pockets on purpose. She timed interactions. She watched older women, younger women, women pushing prams. She reviewed each spike. She assigned motives. She said most men lie. She said technology exposes truth. She said emotions can be graphed. We ate at a small food court. She placed the sensor on me again. She held my wrist down. She wanted extended readings. She watched every person who passed compare the data. She scrolled her logs. She drew conclusions about my morals from heartbeats. She said my spike near a passing couple meant I lacked empathy. She said a dip near a group of friends meant I feared belonging. None of it matched reality. After lunch, she wanted to test stress triggers. She led me into a perfume shop loaded with scents. She tracked how the numbers moved as different staff approached. She said rising heart rate meant I admired them. I said the smell was strong. She ignored it. She said the sample size was too small. We stepped outside. She asked me to walk ahead. She followed behind to capture resting readings. She said the numbers meant I was hiding something. She said guilt leaves a trace. She said she would compare the data later at her place. She asked if I wanted to go with her. I said no. She frowned. The numbers dropped on her screen. She said the drop meant fear. She walked us into a supermarket. In the snack aisle, she blocked the exit with a trolley. She watched her screen and waited for people to pass. She used strangers like lab variables. She said one spike meant attraction. Another dip meant boredom. She said she could map loyalty by pulse rhythm. She asked about my past dating history while staring at the line graph. She asked if I kept secrets. She said I blinked too slow. She wrote it down. At the checkout, she insisted she pay for a drink to log a generosity response. She watched the spike when the cashier smiled. She logged that too. She asked if I thought the cashier was attractive. I said no. The number jumped because the line was long and loud. She misread it. She wrote that I was lying. We sat outside again. She stared at the numbers and tried to decode my personality like a puzzle. She said rising rates near passing students meant I feared being judged. She said dips near older people meant I lacked respect. She said irregular beats meant dishonesty. She ignored my explanation about caffeine. She suggested another experiment. She pulled up a dating app on her phone and scrolled through profiles while watching the graph. She peeked at my wrist. She studied microspikes. She said each spike meant attraction. She logged their heights, hair color, clothing style. She cataloged patterns. I stood up and said I had to leave. She grabbed my wrist and secured the sensor tighter. People stared. My heart rate rose because of embarrassment. She wrote liar next to the spike. She said patterns were confirming her theory. I stepped back. She refused to release the band at first. When she removed it, she kept the pairing active through the app. She said she would monitor the live feed remotely. I checked my settings and saw the pairing request approved earlier. She pulled out her phone and watched the numbers. She watched them climb because I was upset. She smiled with satisfaction. I walked for the bus stop. She followed at a distance to validate the readings. I tried to stay calm so the numbers would not reveal anything. That only made the line jump again. She said from behind me that calm men keep secrets. She logged it. On the bus ride home, I disabled Bluetooth. The readings vanished on her end. She texted me with confusion. She said connection loss meant withdrawal. She said I was proving her hypothesis. She said she needed at least one more session. When I got home, I unpaired every device. I deleted the app. For 2 days, she sent voice notes describing my spikes from memory. She said she could still visualize patterns. She asked to meet again for calibration. She claimed missing data would damage the results. On the 4th day, she sent screenshots. She had logged every spike with timestamps and faces. She drew conclusions about every stranger that passed us. She labeled them based on how my heart moved. She said my loyalty was low due to variability. She said statistical noise meant risk. She sent a final message saying potential unsuitable. After that, she blocked me. Days later, a mutual match messaged me. She said Olivia asked if she could borrow someone's heartbeat profile to compare it. She wanted to track relationships by pulse rhythm. I do not talk about it often. Every time I walk through crowds now, I feel my pulse. I notice spikes. I notice dips. I cannot unsee the numbers. I never wore smart devices again. I avoid crowded malls. Sometimes I imagine someone watching a graph of me from far away. Numbers can be turned into stories by people who want meaning. Stories can turn into rules, and rules can trap you. I matched with Emma on a random Tuesday night because I was bored and scrolling without thinking. Her profile looked normal. Casual pictures. Nice smile. Nothing weird in her bio. She said she was into food places around the city and liked trying new menus. I thought that was a normal interest. I figured we would probably just grab something basic and talk about random stuff. I did not expect the weird control thing she pulled the second we sat down. She chose a little restaurant tucked behind a bus stop. Small tables. Soft lights. The kind of place where the menu is printed on paper that feels recycled. I got there late from traffic. She was already seated. She stared at me like she was judging how I walked. I brushed it off. I thought it was nerves or something. I sat down and the first thing she said was that she already ordered drinks. I barely had time to look at the menu. The waiter came back and I reached for the menu to check food options. Emma took it from my hand and smiled like she was doing something cute. She told the waiter I was not allowed carbs. The waiter looked at me like he wanted confirmation. She did not look away. I hesitated. I shrugged and nodded because I did not want to start an argument 3 minutes into the date. I thought maybe she was joking. The waiter walked away, and she leaned back like she won something. She said she wanted to see if I would obey without questioning her authority. I laughed awkwardly. That feeling you get when you realize someone is not joking. It started small. She wanted to decide what I eat. Then she asked how often I breathe through my mouth. She said most guys do it wrong and it shows weakness. She took out her phone and pretended to log notes. She said she likes to see patterns. The food arrived and mine had no bread, no fries, nothing heavy. Just greens and grilled chicken. She watched me take every bite. Her plate was stacked. Pasta. Bread. She said she earned carbs because she makes decisions. I ignored the comment and kept eating so the night would end faster. She asked me to rank my daily habits: wake up time, sleep time, how often I check my phone. She said structure matters. It felt like a test. I tried to keep the conversation light, but she steered it into control, rules, obedience. She talked like she was training someone, not dating someone. She then asked how easily I give up things I enjoy if asked. She wanted a yes or no. I paused. She looked annoyed. She then snapped at the waiter when he tried to refill my water. She told him no because she wanted to control my intake. The waiter backed off. I felt embarrassed. I told her I can order my own water. She stared at me like she was disappointed. She said she wanted to see if I would obey boundaries. She said guys waste energy when they consume too many carbs and water at random intervals. She said she ran experiments with previous dates. At that moment, I almost got up, but I did not want to leave the scene. I asked her where she got those ideas. She said she studied behavior from dating apps. She said every date is a chance to test a theory. She asked me to show her my phone screen brightness. She said a high setting means lack of discipline. I showed her, and she clicked her tongue like she was grading me. She then asked how often I snack at night. When I said sometimes, she smiled like she caught me. She said the carb thing was a ratio test. If I agreed fast, she said it meant I can be molded. If I refused, she said it meant conflict. She preferred molded. I tried changing the subject. I asked about her job. She avoided it. She said she was self-employed and worked from home. She said she designs routines for people. She then said she had 3 clients she met through dates. She said sometimes she texts them instructions. She said they over-discipline. She then asked me to take a picture of my plate. She wanted to track how many greens I'd ate. She pulled out a notebook and logged it. She also logged how often I blinked. She said blinking patterns can reveal who cracks under pressure. The waiter returned with dessert menus. She grabbed mine before I could read it. She told the waiter I could not have sugar. He looked frustrated but followed her order. I got nothing while she got a big sweet slice. She cut tiny pieces and chewed slowly while staring at me. She said dessert belongs to the person in charge. I felt like the whole restaurant was watching. Then things got worse. She asked me to take out my wallet. She said she wanted to count my cards. She said the number could show how scattered I am. I refused. She leaned forward and whispered that refusing tests shows rebellion. I stayed silent. She looked annoyed again and said some guys fail the obedience thing early. She said she likes when they let her choose everything. She said she once told a guy to not talk during dinner just to see if he would obey. She laughed like she was proud of it. She then asked me if I could stand up and walk to the bathroom without swinging my arms too much. She said arm swinging is childish. I said I did not need the bathroom. She told me to go anyway. I ignored her. She got upset and wrote something in her notebook like I failed something. The bill came and she insisted on paying because she wanted full financial control of the interaction. I said I could split. She said splitting is indecisive. I let her pay so I could leave quicker. Outside the restaurant, she asked if I would see her again. I said I would think about it. She told me that thinking without action is weak. She walked away before I responded. I went home and just sat at my desk thinking about how that went from weird to controlling in minutes. The next morning, she texted me details about a meal plan she made for me. It listed carb amounts at different hours. She told me to follow it. I ignored the message. She sent another telling me to show proof when I eat. I ignored again. After an hour, she sent a long message saying I wasted a chance to improve. She said she knew I was not disciplined material. She said I should not date until I fixed my routine. She then blocked me. A week later, I saw her profile again. Same smile, same bio. Someone else will probably deal with that same control game. I still think about how she acted like she owned the whole interaction. I guess some people treat dates like experiments. I never expected someone to choose my food and order the waiter around just to see if I obey. The whole thing was uncomfortable from the first moment she grabbed the menu. When I matched with Daniel, I did not think much of it. His pictures were normal and he had a calm vibe from the few messages we traded. I was not expecting anything crazy. We picked the small bar that had wooden walls, old posters of football players, and soft music playing in the background. It was the kind of place where most people just chill after work. I got there a little early because traffic was lighter than I thought. I sat down, checked my phone, and waited. A few minutes later, Daniel walked in wearing a loose gray sweater and holding this weird binder under his arm. He smiled like nothing was odd. He sat down and barely said anything before he opened the binder. He slid a stack of handwritten pages toward me. I honestly thought it was a joke. The paper looked like something he scribbled in a hurry. He told me it was an agreement. I just stared at him. He said he wanted security and clarity before the date even started. He said he wanted to make sure we had weekly dates so nobody wasted time. The pages had messy writing listing rules like showing up on time every Friday night, texting every morning, and never canceling plans unless someone is sick. It also had a section where I promised not to date anyone else. I looked around thinking maybe someone was watching for a prank, but nobody cared. It was just us. He pointed at a blank line at the bottom where I was supposed to sign. He even had a pen. He kept tapping on the table like I should hurry. I was confused because we did not even order drinks yet. I told him I needed time to think. He said thinking meant I was scared of commitment. He said most people would be honored to sign something like that. He slid the pages closer. I pushed them back. He frowned and said I was already breaking Rule 1, which was engagement and cooperation. He said hesitation shows low drive. He started writing notes about me on the corner of the page. I got annoyed but tried to keep calm. I told him we just met. He grabbed the binder back like he was guarding something valuable. He flipped through other pages. I saw crossed out names. He had a list of past dates, and next to each one he wrote reasons they failed. Next to one he wrote poor communication. Next to another he wrote inconsistent routines. It looked like an interview score sheet. The waiter came over to take orders and Daniel waved him away like we were busy. The guy looked confused and walked off. Daniel said we could not order drinks until the agreement was signed because he needed a foundation. I joked maybe we should at least talk first. He did not laugh. He said talking without rules leads to wasted time. He leaned in closer. His eyes were wide like he was excited about controlling something. He said consistency matters more than emotions. I asked him why he had so many pages. He said he improves the agreement after every failure. He had printed charts, graphs, and notes about behavior. The charts tracked how many days his past dates replied late. He had red lines showing the moment they lost interest. He said his goal was to find someone who would not drift. He said relationships are battles against drift. The way he said it made my stomach twist. He asked me again to sign. I told him no. He froze. He did not blink for a second. He sighed and said I should have read the rules before showing up. I told him I never got the rules until now. He said that was part of the test. He wrote more notes about me. He logged the exact minute I refused. I checked the clock. Only 7 minutes passed since he sat down. He told me signing weekly commitment was not unreasonable. He said real loyalty shows instantly. I told him this was too much. He raised his voice slightly and said most people make promises anyway, so writing them down just makes them real. I said I barely know him. He said that does not matter because structure builds connection. The waiter came back again and asked if we wanted drinks. I was about to order, but Daniel held his hand up. He said we cannot drink until we are aligned. I felt embarrassed because people were starting to look. He asked what my goals were, what time I wake up, how many friends I have, how often I go out on weekends. He asked if I was willing to avoid late nights so I stay rested for Friday dates. He asked how much free time I could offer weekly. I told him that is personal. He said relationships require sacrifice. He pulled out another page where he had a list of punishments for breaking the agreement. Missing a weekly date meant buying a gift the following week worth at least $60. Forgetting to text meant sending a handwritten apology. He had it all scripted. I pushed the binder away and said this was too much. He leaned back and crossed his arms like I offended him. He said I lacked commitment and discipline. He whispered that this is why modern romance fails. He put the pen down slowly like he was disappointed. He said I should sign or leave. I grabbed my bag. He blocked me with his arm on the table edge and asked for feedback. I said there is nothing to say. He said there is always feedback. He opened his notebook to a blank page. He waited. I told him this contract idea is controlling. He nodded and wrote controlling, but then added maybe too strict, with a question mark. I tried to stand, but he asked one more time if I was sure. He said I might regret missing a chance to grow. I said I was sure. He snapped the binder shut like closing a chapter. He said he will lob me under non-compliant. He did not look at me again. I walked to the front. The waiter gave me a look like he saw everything. I stepped outside and breathed. The night air was cold, but better than sitting there. On the way home, I checked my phone. He already sent a long message with bullet points telling me all the reasons he thinks I failed. He wrote about my posture, my hesitation, my lack of immediate focus, and how I would not make it through his plan. He said I wasted potential. I blocked him. The next day, I checked the app out of curiosity. His profile was gone. Maybe he deleted it, or maybe someone else reported him. I still wonder if someone out there actually signed that contract. The idea of weekly dates written down like we are in a job schedule makes my skin crawl. He had crossed out names and notes in that binder. I was just another line. It feels strange knowing someone tracks behavior like a school project instead of meeting people normally. I guess I should be glad I refused before ordering anything. Maybe that was his real test. Or maybe he just liked having someone follow his plan. Either way, I am done with anyone bringing paperwork to a date before drinks even show up. It started on a cold Friday evening when I met Schlo. I did not plan on going anywhere that day, but she wrote first and asked if I was free. Her profile was normal. She had pictures with pets and coffee cups like everyone else. Nothing strange stood out. We picked a spot near a fountain in the middle of the city. It was busy with people getting off work. Street lights were bright and noisy cars kept passing. She showed up wearing a long coat and holding her phone like she was about to document something. We greeted each other and walked toward a cafe tucked between two shop fronts. It was cramped inside but smelled like cinnamon. We ordered drinks and found a seat near the window. At first she talked normally. She spoke about her job, hobbies, and how she likes to explore the city. She sounded relaxed. Then she noticed her phone screen light up, and she quickly lifted it toward the window, angled like she was taking a picture of someone sitting outside. I thought she was capturing something artistic. She leaned back and whispered flaws about the person she just photographed. She whispered about their hair being messy, their jacket looking cheap, and how they sat wrong. She stared at me while whispering. I did not know what to say. I shrugged and said people are different. She wrote something in her notes app and smirked. A few minutes later, a couple walked in. As they passed our table, she held her phone up again, snapping a picture like she was pretending to adjust camera settings. She whispered that the guy's shoes were dirty and the girl's scarf was wrinkled. She watched my reaction carefully. I told her I did not pay attention to stuff like that. She tilted her head like she found that interesting. She then whispered that most people need to be trained to notice weaknesses. She asked if I thought judging strangers was wrong. I said it felt rude. She typed something else on her phone without looking at the screen. She finished her drink fast and suggested we walk around outside. The streets were busy with people rushing to buses. As we walked, she slowed down behind random people, took quick pictures, then leaned close to my ear whispering flaws. She whispered about crooked teeth, worn shoes, uneven facial hair, baggy eyes, dull jackets. She said she could see everything wrong about everyone. Every whisper came with her eyes locked on mine. It felt like she wanted me to nod or agree. I stayed quiet, but she kept whispering more. She said she wanted to see how I handled public judgment. She pulled me toward a bench near a bus stop. A man sat there reading a book. She took a photo of him without hesitation. She whispered that his reading posture looked weak. She smiled, expecting agreement. I looked at the floor. She typed again. Then she walked behind a group of teenagers and took another picture. She whispered about their clothes being outdated and their haircuts being silly. She whispered like she was sharing secrets, but every word felt heavy. It was like she was trying to drag me into her world of constant judgment. We walked into a small shop to get snacks. While I looked at the shelves, she snapped a photo of the cashier. She whispered that the cashier's face looked tired and dull. She said working in places like that ruins you. The cashier noticed and asked if he could help us. She hid her phone and smiled like nothing happened. We bought drinks and left. Outside, she whispered again about how that cashier probably lacked goals. I felt uncomfortable because none of these people did anything to her. She just poked at every flaw she could find. She then turned the camera toward an elderly woman walking slowly on the sidewalk. She snapped a picture and whispered about her skin. She asked me if I thought she was right. I said no. She paused and looked at me with confusion. She said if I ignored flaws, I might ignore her too. She said noticing flaws keeps connections alive. She typed more notes. I was starting to get annoyed. I asked her why she does this. She said she studies reactions. She said she can tell who is going to be loyal by how they react to whispered judgment. She said if someone ignores flaws, they get bored easily. If someone agrees, they commit longer. She said the photos help her remember. She guided us into a crowded plaza. People stood around a food truck. She took rapid pictures of strangers, whispering flaws faster than I could process. She whispered about someone's shoes, someone else's nose, someone else's hairline. She watched my face each time. My expression probably changed because she smirked like she was winning. She said noticing flaws in strangers builds trust between two people. She said it forms a secret language. I was not comfortable sharing negativity with someone I just met. She then pointed her camera at a kid holding ice cream and whispered that the kid would grow up messy. I pulled her hand down. She stared at me confused again and scribbled something on her phone. When I asked what she wrote, she said I showed signs of conflict avoidance. She said most dates do not stop her. She said one guy even joined her and pointed out flaws too. She said they did not last because he ran out of flaws after 2 weeks. I was done, but she insisted we walk further. She snapped a picture of a man carrying groceries and whispered that he dressed sloppy. She whispered that the world is ugly and someone has to point it out. She whispered that ignoring ugliness is weak. I was tired of whispers crawling into my ears. We sat down on steps near a busker playing guitar. She snapped a picture of him and whispered that he was wasting talent. She asked if I agreed. I said no. She wrote more notes. The busker noticed and approached. He asked if she took pictures of him. She lied and said she was taking pictures of the city. He shrugged and moved on. She watched him walk away and whispered his posture was sad. She asked me why I did not defend her if he got angry. I told her he was not angry. She said reaction speed matters. She typed another note. I told her I wanted to go home. She looked disappointed. She snapped one more picture of me without asking. I asked why. She said she wanted to remember my reaction. She said she could see flaws in me too. She whispered that one of my flaws was that I did not join her. She said another flaw was that I did not commit to judgment. She said couples are built from shared judgment. I said that made no sense and walked away. As I left, she kept calling my name, but I ignored her. I walked faster until she was out of sight. When I got home, I checked my phone. She sent pictures she took of those strangers. She wrote paragraphs about their flaws and asked if I read them and agreed. I blocked her. The next morning, I saw her story online showing pictures of random people from that night. No faces covered. She added long captions whispering their flaws publicly. I still think about how she whispered into my ear like she was building a world made of negativity. It was not just rude. It was like she wanted me trapped in it with her. That whole date felt like a test to see if I would judge strangers just to get closer to someone. I matched with Mark on a random afternoon when I was bored scrolling. He seemed chill in his messages. He talked about food spots, long walks, and how he liked meeting new people without things getting weird. His pictures showed him smiling, wearing casual clothes, nothing strange going on. We planned to meet at a restaurant across town that I never tried before. It had these big plants near the entrance and bright yellow lights hanging from the ceiling. I thought it would just be dinner and small talk. I got ready and took the bus there. When I showed up, he was outside waiting. He waved and seemed excited. We walked inside and he told the host we already had a table booked. We got seated near a window. I saw people walking past the glass and cars driving by slowly. It had a peaceful vibe. We opened the menus and started looking at options. Before we even ordered drinks, I saw this girl walking toward us. She looked confident and walked like she belonged at the table. She stopped right behind Mark and smiled at him. He smiled back. I thought maybe she was someone he knew from work. She sat down without asking. Mark then introduced her as his ex. I thought it was a joke. I looked around like maybe someone was filming. Nobody reacted. She scooted her chair close to him like she had been there before. Mark leaned in and whispered that he wanted to see how mature I was. He said staying calm when an ex shows up proves emotional control. He said most people get dramatic. I sat there stunned. The ex pulled out her phone and opened old pictures of them together. She laughed and nudged him, pointing at memories I had no part of. Mark watched my reaction carefully. I tried to focus on the menu, but the pages looked blurry because my head was spinning. The waiter came and asked what drinks we wanted. The ex ordered for herself before I could speak. Mark ordered something simple. He told the waiter to skip me for now. He said we would decide after he finished something. I sat there confused. I asked him if this was planned. He said yes. He said he brings his ex on first dates because it tells him who can handle patience. The ex giggled and said she likes helping him with his choices. She looked at my clothes and then whispered something into his ear. They both smirked. I wanted to stand up, but I did not want to look upset. I felt trapped between not reacting and not letting them mock me. The drinks arrived. The ex took a sip, then talked about all the vacations she and Mark took. She talked about inside jokes like she was rubbing it in. Mark turned to me and asked if I thought she was annoying. I said no because I did not want to give them satisfaction. He wrote something down on a napkin like he was keeping score. The food menu stayed open, but nobody ordered. The ex pulled out more pictures, showing them holding hands, smiling, hugging at scenic places. She made comments about how fun it was. Mark kept glancing at me like he was waiting for me to break. He said staying calm meant long-term success. He said jealousy shows weakness and fear is childish. The ex nodded and stared at me. I stared back but stayed quiet. They talked about old arguments they had and how he always won them. She bragged about how she learned to behave better from dating him. She asked me if I would be able to do the same. I said I just wanted dinner. She chuckled and wrote something on her phone. The waiter came again and asked if we were ready to order. Mark asked his ex what she wanted first. She ordered a fancy dish and then told the waiter to bring Mark the same. She did not ask me if I wanted anything. I interrupted and ordered something simple. The ex rolled her eyes. Mark wrote more notes. When the food arrived, the ex fed him small bites and asked if I was jealous. I said no again. Mark said my tone sounded irritated. He wrote it down. My food sat untouched because I lost my appetite. They kept talking about personal things like I was not there. The ex leaned back and asked him if he missed her. He said sometimes. She smiled like she won something. She looked at me and asked if that bothered me. I said not really. Mark wrote even more. Halfway through the meal, the ex got up and left for a bit. She left her bag on the chair like she was coming back. Mark leaned in and asked if I wanted to leave. I said maybe. He smirked and said that meant I was failing. He said long-term relationships require handling external threats. He said life throws distractions and you need to stay calm. I said this felt unnecessary. He said people who run away from discomfort waste potential. He asked me to stay when she returned. I considered walking out, but the weirdness pulled me deeper. The ex walked back with dessert samples she convinced the staff to bring. She placed one in front of herself and one in front of Mark, but not me. She then asked him if she was prettier. He smiled and wrote more things. He turned to me and asked me to rate her looks from 1 to 10. I refused. He said refusing meant insecurity. I stayed silent. The ex started telling embarrassing stories about his past just to see if I would react. She pointed at strangers passing the window and compared them to me. Mark agreed with some comments. She said they had better chemistry. He nodded. Then he glanced at me like he was waiting for an explosion. The waiter kept looking at me with sympathy. I finally asked for the bill even though I barely ate. Mark said I should not pay because I did not pass the test. He scribbled something on his napkin, tore it, and handed it to me. It listed categories like jealousy, patience, control, and emotional silence. He gave me a low score. The ex giggled again. He said maybe next time I could do better. I crumpled the napkin and stood up. The ex asked if I was really leaving. I said yes. Mark said leaving shows weakness. I walked out anyway. Outside, the air felt cold but clean compared to that table. I heard the restaurant door open behind me. The ex walked out first. She handed me one of her notes from her phone. It had a list of other people's first date scores. Names, numbers, notes about reactions, how fast they cried or snapped. She said Mark keeps everyone on record. Then she walked back inside and closed the door like nothing happened. I went home and ignored my phone. Hours later, he sent a message. He said I disappointed him. He said I broke too soon. He said I needed to work on not caring. I blocked him. Days later, I saw his profile updated with new pictures, including one with his ex smiling behind him. I wondered if she attends every one of his dates. Maybe he collects reactions like trophies. Either way, I am never sitting at a table again where someone else's past stares at me while waiting for me to break. I never thought something as dumb as a casual dating app could drag me into a situation where my own mom started looking at me like I was some hidden villain. The whole thing started kind of normal. I matched with this girl called Layla. At first, she seemed cool. We met at this small diner near my area because I was tired of coffee shops and wanted something different. She showed up wearing this bright jacket like she wanted everyone to notice her. We talked, ate, and even laughed a little. Nothing crazy. I went home thinking the date was fine, but probably not going anywhere serious. I wasn't blown away or anything, just a chill time. I didn't message her much after. Not because I was trying to ghost, but I had work, gym, and family stuff happening at the same time. She messaged a few times asking what I was doing and how my day was. It was fine at first. Then she started sending paragraphs about how I should update her every hour so she knows I'm safe. I remember staring at my phone wondering why she even cared that much, especially after just one date. The energy felt heavy. I slowed down my replies and planned to just leave it. No argument, no drama. Then things got weird. She showed up outside my workplace 3 days later. I spotted her through the window pretending to wait for a bus. The thing is, there's no bus on that road. She acted surprised when I walked out, but I didn't believe it. I brushed it off, figured maybe she was passing through, even though that made no sense. But whatever. I headed home later thinking it was just a strange coincidence. That night, she started texting nonstop. Stuff like how she feels like she needs reassurance and how she felt a connection deeper than anything before. I didn't reply. I was tired. The next morning, she sent more messages asking why I ignored her, saying she knows I was awake because she saw I was active online. I didn't even know apps snitched like that. My stomach dropped a bit. It just felt creepy, especially because we only met once. I told myself I was done replying and minded my business. Next day, my mom called me downstairs while I was still halfway getting ready. When I walked into the kitchen, she was standing there with this confused, disappointed expression. My phone buzzed. It was Layla again, but I ignored it. My mom told me some girl had come to our house. She said the girl stood outside and told her I cheated on her after leading her on, telling her I was seeing multiple girls. I froze completely. I didn't even know how she found my house. My mom hit me with questions. She wanted answers. I explained we only met once and never dated. I didn't cheat on anyone. My mom listened, but I could tell some doubt settled in her mind. It ruined the vibe in the house. I saw it when I came downstairs later. Just small things. My mom didn't smile the same. She asked where I was going every time I stepped out. I hated it. That night, I checked outside through the window just in case. Nothing there. I tried to sleep, but my mind kept bouncing between anger and confusion. How could someone turn a simple date into all this? 2 days passed. I went to work and everything felt normal at first. Then on break, I walked out to grab a drink from a nearby shop. On the way back, I noticed the same bright jacket across the street facing away from me. I wasn't even sure at first. Then she slowly turned like she was waiting for me to notice her. Her expression was flat, staring. No smile, nothing. She crossed the road and followed me back toward the building, but never came all the way. Just close enough to see where I was going. I didn't react. I just walked in, heart racing a bit. That evening after work, I found a printed note tucked under my car wiper. It said she forgave me for cheating and lying, and that she would be the bigger person. My blood boiled. She was painting a story that never existed. I tried calling her number, but she blocked me. Only she wasn't done. The next morning, my auntie messaged me asking about some girl who was crying outside her house, saying I played her like a game. My auntie lives across town. That means Layla tracked my family through something. Maybe my socials, maybe conversations she stalked online. I don't know. She even told my auntie she wanted to warn girls about guys like me. The whole thing sounded insane, and deeper than just jealousy. After that, I decided to stay inside for a few days, hoping she'd get bored. I shut all curtains and just lay there scrolling mindlessly, trying not to think about it. On the third evening, my doorbell rang, slow. Just one ring. I peeked out the downstairs window, and there she was again, holding a small envelope. I refused to open the door. She placed it under the mat and walked off like she had achieved something. When she left, I grabbed the envelope. Inside was a handwritten page talking about how I should learn my lesson and how she's protecting others. She wrote about checking my family's reactions online like she was monitoring us. That was the moment I felt a kind of fear I never felt before. The next week, she kept popping up. Not every day, but enough to keep me on edge. At the gym from across the street near my friend's house, outside the supermarket. Always just watching with this weird calm, like she enjoyed seeing me stressed. I wanted to confront her, but something about her eyes made me back out every time. They held something unbalanced, like she could twist anything I said against me. Eventually, she stopped showing up. My mom slowly started believing me again after nothing else happened. The house turned back to normal. I tried going on with life. Months passed. I changed my number, locked my profiles, and stopped using dating apps. One night, while scrolling through social media, I saw a random account posting about warning girls of fake guys. The username was nothing like her old one, but the way she typed was the same. Same weird dramatic lines. Same fake stories. In the comments, people were supporting her. I blocked it and closed the app. Sometimes I wonder if she actually believed her own lies. Maybe she built a story in her head and convinced herself. Maybe she followed other guys too. I just hope I never see that bright jacket again, because if I do, I'm done pretending it's nothing.